Somewhere in your phone right now, there's a folder you don't open. Photos of someone who isn't here anymore. You keep them anyway. You're not sure why. Most people assume this is a modern habit, a soft, sentimental thing your culture taught you. But the real answer is far stranger. Long before there were folders or phones or culture as you'd recognize it, your ancestors were already doing something eerily similar. They were holding on to the dead. Picture a cave in the Zagros Mountains in what is now northern Iraq. It's cold. The wind cuts through the entrance. Inside, a group of Neanderthals has just lost one of their own. What do they do next? For most of the 20th century, the answer scientists gave was simple. Nothing. Neanderthals were brutish, animal-like. They left their dead where they fell, the same way a wolf pack might. Then, in the 1950s, an archaeologist named Ralph Selecki started digging in that exact cave. It was called Shanidar, and what he found didn't fit the story at all. Selecki uncovered a Neanderthal skeleton, an adult male buried in a shallow pit. Around the body, soil samples revealed high concentrations of pollen. Not one flower, several species, clustered together as if placed deliberately. Selecki proposed something radical for the time. He suggested this individual had been buried with flowers. A funeral, essentially. The press loved it. They called it the flower burial. A tender image. Neanderthals, grieving with bouquets, tens of thousands of years before your calendar even starts counting. Here's where it gets complicated, though, because science doesn't stop at a nice story. Decades later, researchers went back to Shanidar. A team led by Paleolithic archaeologist Paul Pettit examined the site again with modern tools. They found something the pollen alone couldn't tell you. Burrowing rodents live in that region. Persian jurds, specifically. These small animals store seeds and flowers underground, often in the exact kind of shallow tunnels that could intersect a burial pit. The flowers might not have been placed by mourning hands at all. They might have been stashed by a rodent, completely unrelated to the body beneath them. So which is true? Did Neanderthals grieve with flowers, or did science just want them to? The honest answer is messier than either headline. And that messiness is the actual story. Because even without the flowers, Shanidar still holds something undeniable. The body was buried, not dropped, not abandoned, placed in a pit, in a fetal-like position, at a location the group returned to more than once. Something about that individual mattered enough to warrant deliberate, repeated treatment. That part isn't in dispute. This is where your ancestors start looking less like the shuffling cartoon you were taught in school, and more like something closer to you. Go back even further. Around 100,000 years ago, in a cave called Kafza, in what is now Israel, archaeologists found early Homo sapiens remains arranged with unmistakable intention. One skeleton was found with the antlers of a deer positioned across its chest. Researcher Arella Hovers, who studied burials at Kafza, has pointed to this as some of the earliest strong evidence of symbolic behavior toward the dead. Not just disposal, composition. Someone chose those antlers. Someone placed them there, on purpose, on a body that could no longer see them. Why would that matter? The person was dead. They wouldn't know. So who was the gesture actually for? This is the question that reframes everything. Burial, it turns out, was never really about the dead. It was about the living, about the unbearable gap a death leaves behind, and the very human need to do something with that gap instead of simply walking away from it. Think about what it actually takes to bury a body. You need to dig by hand through rock-hard or frozen ground, using nothing but bone tools and raw effort. You need to carry or drag the body to that spot. You need to agree, as a group, that this labor is worth it. There's no calorie gained, no safety improved, no practical survival benefit at all. In a world where every hour spent not hunting or foraging was an hour closer to your own hunger, spending that hour digging a grave for someone who could no longer eat, hunt, or reproduce was, in purely evolutionary terms, a strange thing to prioritize. And yet, they did it. Again and again. Across tens of thousands of years, and multiple different human species. Some researchers argue this points to something profound. Mark Kissel, a biological anthropologist who studies the origins of ritual behavior, has suggested that these early burials may represent one of the first visible signs of a uniquely human capacity, the ability to hold an abstract idea about someone who is no longer physically present, not just missing them the way a dog waits by the door, but constructing a kind of ongoing relationship with an absence, a story about a person that continues after the person themselves is gone. That capacity didn't disappear when the last Neanderthal died out around 40,000 years ago. It became the blueprint for almost every human culture that followed. Ancient Egyptians built entire cities for their dead, stocked with food, furniture, and servants rendered in stone, so the person's story could theoretically continue in another form. Ancient Greeks left coins on the eyes of the dead, a toll for a ferryman who existed only in shared belief. Victorian families in the 1800s photographed deceased relatives, sometimes posed as if still alive, propped upright, eyes occasionally painted onto closed lids in the print itself. Different tools, different centuries, completely different technologies, same underlying instinct. Don't let the story end here. Now look at your own habits again. That folder on your phone, the voice memo you never deleted, even though you'll probably never listen to it again. The way you sometimes still address a thought to someone who isn't there to hear it. None of that is irrational. None of it is a personal quirk you should feel embarrassed about. It's an unbroken thread stretching back through Kafze, through Shanidar, through every hand that ever dug a grave it didn't have to dig. Here's the twist most people never consider, though. Grief itself may not be a bug in human psychology. It might be a feature that only exists because bonding does. Some evolutionary psychologists frame attachment and grief as two sides of the same adaptation, the same neural and social wiring that made your ancestors cooperate, share food, protect each other's children, and survive in groups is the exact same wiring that makes losing one of those people feel unbearable. You cannot have one without the other. The depth of the loss is the price of having had the connection at all. Which means every time you've grieved something, you were also, quietly, proving how well the bonding worked. That reframes the flowers at Shanidar too, doesn't it? Even if a rodent placed them, even if the pollen was pure coincidence, the burial itself wasn't. Someone, tens of thousands of years ago, decided a body deserved more than being left where it fell. And whether or not there were flowers in that pit, there was almost certainly something else in that moment. People standing around a hole in cold ground, quiet, unsure exactly what to do with the size of what they were feeling. Which is, if you think about it, a scene you'd probably recognize instantly, even now. So the next time you keep something you don't need, a photo, a voicemail, a jacket that still smells like someone, you're not being irrational and you're not being modern. You're doing something your species has done since before it was fully your species at all. You're refusing to let the story end at the last exhale. And somewhere in a cave in the Zagros Mountains, 40,000 years before your phone even had a folder to hold it in, someone else already understood exactly why.